They shoved a black girl to the ground, and nobody did a thing. Not the teachers, not the students, not even the security guard. But 10 minutes later, someone stood up, and it wasn't who anyone expected. What made a quiet white girl, invisible by choice, walk straight into danger? Why did the school try to twist the truth? And who finally exposed it? And how did a single moment in a school courtyard ignite a movement no one saw coming? This isn't just a story about bullying. It's about silence, power, and the courage to break both. Stay with us, because by the end, you'll understand exactly how one step changed everything. It was a gray-skied Monday in late March, the kind that carried spring in the air but still held winter in the breeze. At Eastbrook High School, the morning looked ordinary. Buses groaning to a halt, students spilling out in clusters, sneakers squeaking on wet pavement. Voices rose like static, chatter, laughter, locker slams. Nothing felt unusual, nothing looked different. And yet, something was. Ella Parker walked the same cracked sidewalk she always did, denim backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair pulled, back into a lazy ponytail. No makeup, no drama, no need to be seen. That was her rhythm. Invisibility wasn't a curse, it was a shield. At least that's how she wore it. She slipped past the flagpole, where the wind tugged at a limp American flag, and made her way toward the east entrance. Her mind was already calculating the day. English quiz, physics lab, pick up Drew after school. Her brother's physical therapy session had been moved to 3:30, which meant no time to stay late and no distractions. Drew, her older brother by 2 years, had been in a wheelchair since the accident last summer. Since then, life has shifted. There were no parties, no games, no late-night hangouts. Just Ella, Drew, and the constant hum of responsibility. She didn't complain. Caring for him had rewired how she saw everything, especially cruelty. She could recognize it now, even when it wore a smile. She was halfway to the door when she heard it. The voices weren't loud yet, just sharper than the rest, angled, ugly in tone. Ella slowed, pivoted slightly toward the front steps. A group had gathered, not a mob, not yet, but enough to create distance, enough to mark that something was happening. At the center stood 3 boys. Varsity jackets, perfect hair, shoes are too clean. Brent Morgan, Chase Keller, Ty Whitman. Everyone knew those. Names. Brent's dad owned the dealership downtown. Chase's uncle was on the school board. Ty's older brother was a local sheriff's deputy. Their power didn't come from strength. It came from reputation, from whispered warnings not to cross them. They walked loudly, not in volume, but in posture. In E. Front of them stood a girl whom Ella didn't know well but had seen in algebra. Tiana Brooks, new to Eastbrook, moved down from Atlanta a month ago. She was short, poised, dark-skinned, with a halo of tight curls pulled into a puff. She wore her backpack like armor, high, snug, with both straps on. She stood still, quiet, but not afraid. Brent smirked. Chase tilted his head. Ty leaned back on one foot, watching. Ella couldn't hear the words. But she didn't have to. The tension in Tiana's body told the story. She tried to step forward. That was her mistake. Chase slid sideways, blocking her. Ty shifted behind her, and then Brent leaned in. His lips moved, his hand moved faster. The shove wasn't violent. Not enough to break a bone, just enough to make a point. Tiana staggered sideways, her backpack slid, her balance tipped, then her knees hit the pavement, hard. A gasp rippled across the steps, but no one moved. Books scattered. A pencil rolled, Brent laughed, Chase clapped once like it was part of a show. Ty? He just whistled, and behind every window, every doorway, every phone camera not pointed in time, people watched and did nothing. Tiana didn't cry, she didn't scream, she didn't beg. She just stayed on one knee, picking up her things like nothing had happened. But her hands were shaking. Ella's feet hadn't moved. Not yet. Her breath caught in her throat. Her mother's voice echoed from memory. Keep your head down, Ella. Stay out of things that don't need fixing. But then Tiana looked up. Their eyes met. There was no plea, no desperation, just a question. Are you really going to do nothing? Ella blinked. Her hands curled tighter around her backpack strap. The boys walked off, satisfied, smug. Brent's laughter floated on the wind. The crowd dissolved back into routine. Bell schedules, morning announcements, chatter resumed like nothing had happened. But something had, because deep inside Ella, somewhere just under her ribs, a match had struck, and a fire had begun to burn. She didn't know what she was going to say, or even what she would do, but she knew one thing for certain. The next time those boys laughed, she wouldn't be standing still. Tiana stayed on the ground longer than she needed to. Not because she couldn't get up, but because no one offered to help. A few students nearby shifted awkwardly, their eyes flickering toward the scene like moths drawn to something dangerous. One girl in a hoodie tucked her headphones in tighter and walked away. Another boy leaned against a locker and looked down, pretending to be focused on his phone. Not a single voice called out. Not a single hand reached forward. Even the security guard, parked just 10 feet away in his SUV, lifted his coffee cup and did nothing. He watched through the windshield like this was another boring episode he'd already seen. Something beneath him. Something not worth getting out of the car for. Tiana knelt on the pavement, quietly brushing pebbles off her scraped knees. Her elbow had a shallow gash and her backpack zipper was cracked open from the fall. She tried to zip it with trembling fingers, but the sound of laughter, their laughter, echoed louder than the pain. The boys had already disappeared into the crowd, their grins still painted on their faces like they had just pulled off a school prank instead of an act of humiliation, and through it all, Ella Parker stood frozen just a few yards away. Her chest was tight, her jaw clenched, but her legs wouldn't move. Because even if her heart screamed, her mother's voice was louder. Keep your head down, Ella. Stay out of trouble. This town doesn't fix broken things. It buries them. She had learned the rule early, when Drew got hurt, when no one at the school district returned their calls, when a teacher once joked about natural selection during a disability unit. She'd watched what silence looked like. She'd memorized how it moved. But now, watching Tiana on the concrete, alone, bleeding, invisible, Ella realized something else. Silence didn't just keep you safe, it kept them safe. And that was different. That was dangerous. The first bell rang. The courtyard started to clear. Life moved on like the moment hadn't happened. But Ella didn't. She stood there long enough to see the blood soak into the edge of Tiana's sock. She didn't know why that detail stuck with her. Maybe because it was so small. So quiet, like the wound had decided to be polite about its presence. 10 minutes later, the front of the school was empty again. No laughter, no crowd, just wind and concrete. And one girl sitting alone by the flagpole. Tiana sat with her legs folded to one side, dabbing at her knee with a crumpled napkin. Her eyes were dry. Her face was calm. But something in her posture, tight shoulders, a jaw set too still, said everything. Ella didn't approach quickly. She didn't ask permission. She just walked over, dropped her backpack beside her, and sat down, cross-legged on the pavement like it was lunchtime in elementary school. They didn't speak at first. There was no need. The wind filled the silence. So did the low hum of the flag chain clinking against the pole. Tiana didn't look up. But she didn't move away either. After a minute, Ella reached into her bag, pulled out a napkin from her lunch pouch, and wordlessly handed it over. Tiana took it without hesitation. Still, no words. Just the quiet rhythm of two girls who didn't know each other but understood each other completely. Another 5 minutes passed. Then Ella saw them. Across the courtyard, near the vending machines by the gym, the three boys had gathered again. Brent, Chase, Ty. Their laughter floated across the field like smoke. Ella's eyes narrowed. They weren't laughing at her, or at Tiana anymore. They were just laughing, like nothing happened, like it meant nothing. Tiana finally spoke, her voice barely above the breeze. "You don't have to sit here." Ella glanced sideways. "I know." Another beat. "You don't even know me," Tiana said. "I know enough," Ella replied. Silence again. Then Tiana whispered something that didn't sound like a question, but still felt like one. "So, that's it?" Ella didn't answer. Instead, she reached up, pulled the loose hair tie from her wrist, and looped it around her ponytail. Tightened it. Set her jaw. Tiana looked at her. Confused? "What are you doing?" Ella stood. Tiana blinked. "Wait, where? Are you going?" But Ella didn't respond. Because some choices don't need explanations. Some moments write their own instructions. She took one breath, then stepped away from the flagpole. Her pace wasn't fast, but her steps hit the ground harder than before, and across the field the boys were still laughing. Ella didn't know exactly what she was going to say. She didn't need a perfect line. She just knew one thing. If she stayed silent, she'd carry that silence forever. Ella walked like her feet weren't her own. The air was thick with noise, bells ringing in the distance, kids yelling across the quad, a lawnmower somewhere groaning to life. But her focus was razor sharp. She didn't have a speech in mind. No plan. No strategy. Just that fire in her chest, the kind that makes you stop caring about consequences. The kind that only starts burning when you've seen something too clearly to ever unsee it. Brent, Chase, and Ty stood near the vending machines, sipping sports drinks like they'd just won something. Brent leaned against the brick wall, arms folded, talking with his hands. Chase was tossing a football between his palms. Ty scrolled his phone one-handed, nodding along. They didn't see her at first, but when she was 10 feet away, Brent looked up and smirked. "Well, look who found her voice," he said, elbowing Chase. Ella stopped 2 steps short, close enough to be heard, far enough to stay calm. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. "You think what you did this morning was funny?" she asked, voice level. Chase chuckled. "What are you even talking about?" Ella looked at him like he was glass, see-through and unimportant. "You shoved a girl to the ground in front of half the school." Brent lifted his eyebrows mockingly. "Nah, she tripped." "Sure she did," Ella said. "Right after your buddy shoved her shoulder." Ty looked up from his phone. "You trying to play hero now, Ella?" She didn't respond. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "The school has cameras at the front entrance. That changed everything." The smirks faded. Chase shifted on his feet. Ty leaned back, suddenly less casual. Brent's jaw tightened just enough for Ella to catch it. She had no idea if the cameras worked. She didn't even know if they recorded audio, but it didn't matter. She'd struck the right nerve. "There's footage," she said, her tone like glass. "And people saw it." Brent forced a scoff, but his posture betrayed him. "You're bluffing." Ella held his gaze. "Try me." For a moment, the boys stood there in silence. The kind of silence that could go either way, escalation or retreat. Then, a deeper voice cut through the air behind them. "Something wrong over here?" Coach Daniels. He walked up slowly, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, clipboard in hand. The boys turned like kids caught with stolen candy. Coach Daniels wasn't a talker. He wasn't the let's have a chat type. He believed in laps, in whistle shrieks and red-faced push-ups. He'd coached every one of them. He looked from Ella to the boys. Brent opened his mouth, but Daniels beat him to it. "You touch her again," the coach said flatly, "and you're out." Brent blinked. I saw enough," Daniels snapped. "I don't care whose name is on the gym wall. Try me." The tension snapped like a twig. Brent stepped back. Chase looked away. Ty muttered something and stuffed his hands in his jacket. Then they turned and walked. No apology. No fight. But more importantly, no more laughter. Ella stood still until they were out of sight. Only then did her shoulders drop. Coach Daniels gave her a nod. "You okay?" "I am now," she said. He started walking away, then paused. "Good on you," he added over his shoulder. Ella didn't reply. She turned around, and there was Tiana, still sitting by the flagpole, knees pulled close, a half-crumpled napkin in her hand. She had seen the whole thing. Ella walked back across the courtyard. No crowd, no eyes. Just her and the girl who had been pushed into the dirt less than an hour ago. When she sat back down beside her, Tiana asked quietly, "Why'd you do that?" Ella shrugged, not looking at her. "Because someone should have." Tiana didn't answer, but she didn't need to. They sat in silence. The kind that didn't sting. The kind that said, "We both saw it, and we both came back anyway." But truth in high school has a half-life, and rumors, they burn faster than gasoline. By the next period, everyone had heard a version of what happened, just not the right one. By lunch the next day, Eastbrook High wasn't talking about the shove. They were talking about the video, not the full scene, not the context. Just 30 seconds of Ella Parker standing in front of Brent, Chase, and Ty, arms tense, voice raised, expression hard. The clip spread through group chats like wildfire, but it wasn't what happened. It was what they made it. The caption read, "Hero Complex Girl Starts Drama." Someone had added background music, cheap pop beats with an overlaid laugh. Track. Ella's voice was barely audible, distorted and chopped, turned into a meme. There were animated sound effects, zoom-ins, and subtitles that twisted every word into something she hadn't said. They made her look unhinged, aggressive, ridiculous. No one mentioned that she was standing up for someone else. No one mentioned that Tiana had been pushed. No one included the part where Coach Daniels stepped in, or that Brent had backed off without saying a word. That part was cropped out, and the new version? It was going viral, at least by Eastbrook standards. By the 6th period, Ella felt it. Not just the stares, the difference between them. Before, she was invisible by choice. Now she was ridiculed. People nudged each other when she walked by. Others went silent in her presence, their smirks louder than words. A group of junior girls burst into laughter when she passed them in the hall. Not at her, but around her. A warning shot. She didn't flinch. She didn't respond. She'd learned that the more you react, the more they feed off it. But inside, something pulled tight, like a wire strung too long without relief. At her locker, she found a sticky note. "Congrats, Captain Save-A-Lot." Smiley face, slanted handwriting. No name. Tiana found her after school in the library, sitting at the far corner table near the tall windows where the light pooled soft and gold. She slid into the seat without asking. "You okay?" Ella didn't look up, just kept her pencil moving, across the page, writing something that wasn't homework. "I'm used to it." Tiana frowned. "You shouldn't have to be." Ella paused, then whispered, "Tell that to the rest of the school." Tiana reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded paper. An old newspaper clipping, yellowed edges. She slid it across the table. "Found this in my mom's scrapbook," she said quietly. Ella looked down. It was a photo from a march in 2001, 3 women holding handmade signs, one reading, "Silence is a costume, not a cure." Tiana nodded at it. "They told my mom she was too loud, too angry, too much, for trying to report harassment in her first year of teaching." Ella's eyes moved slowly across the faded headline. "Teacher accuses district of retaliation." Tiana added, "She lost her job, but someone else didn't." "Because of her." Ella's throat tightened. She folded the paper gently, like it was something sacred. I didn't want attention, she said softly. I know. I just didn't want her to sit there alone. I know that too. Neither of them spoke for a while. When Ella got home that night, the house smelled like microwave lasagna. The TV buzzed low from the living room. Her brother Drew sat at the kitchen table, one wheel of his chair turned slightly sideways, sipping a chocolate shake like it was the best part of his day. He looked up when she dropped her bag. You good? Ella hesitated, then sat across from him, elbows on the table. There's a video of me going around. He raised an eyebrow. You go viral? Should I start selling merch? Ella gave a half laugh, but her eyes didn't match it. They made me the punchline, she said. Took what I did and turned it into a joke. Drew leaned back, tapping his straw against the lid of the cup. Well, he said, you've got two choices. Ella blinked. Which are? He pointed at her, like he was delivering a line from a movie. Let them set the fire, or build something from it. She tilted her head. That's supposed to be deep? He grinned. It is deep. Now write it down before I forget it. Ella shook her head, but the words landed heavier than she expected. Let them set the fire. Or build something from it. She went upstairs not long after, opened her window, and sat on the floor with her back against the bed. The moon was pale and distant, but steady. Her notebook lay open in her lap, blank page waiting. She wrote one. Sentence at the top, not everyone who laughs is brave, then underlined it twice. The fire had started, but Ella wasn't about to burn quietly, not this time, and the next move wouldn't come with sound effects or captions. It would come with truth. By Wednesday, the video had cooled. Not forgotten, but dulled, like a bruise turning yellow. Whispers still followed Ella in the hallways, but the sting had faded. Most people had moved on to some new drama. Who got detention? Who kissed whom? Behind the library. Typical Eastbrook distractions. But some people, they didn't move on. They saw courage as a threat, and Ella's silence breaking had made her a target, not just for the boys, but now for someone else. Her name was Sierra Nolan. Cheer captain, class vice president, the kind of girl who made straight A's while still managing to cut people down with surgical precision. She was the town's crown jewel, blonde, confident, polished to a mirror shine, and she didn't like ripples, especially not from girls like Tiana. That Thursday afternoon, during, free period, Tiana wandered alone into the side hallway near the gym. She was supposed to be heading to tutoring, but the classroom lights were off and her usual teacher was nowhere in sight. So she circled back, quiet, careful, used to being cautious. That's when Sierra stepped out of the doorway, blocking her path. Two other girls stood behind her, softer echoes, not brave enough to lead, but loud enough to support whatever came next. Tiana stopped. Sierra didn't smile. She didn't need to. Well, if it isn't our little hero's shadow, she said sweetly. Tiana's spine stiffened. Sierra circled slowly, her heels echoing off the tile. Her voice dipped just enough to stay under the radar of nearby classrooms. You think just because some girl got loud for you, you're protected now. Tiana didn't answer, but her fingers clenched around the strap of her backpack. Sierra leaned in closer. Here's the thing, she whispered, like sharing a secret. Crowns don't last long here, especially not borrowed ones. That's when a new set of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Ella. She didn't yell, didn't storm forward, she just appeared. Like tension summoned her. Her eyes flicked from Sierra to Tiana. Her jaw was tight. Sierra straightened, unfazed. Relax, we're just talking. Ella stepped in front of Tiana, solid, unmoving. You done? The air went sharp. Sierra tilted her head. Funny how the quiet girl can't stop talking now. No, Ella said. just picking better times to speak. Sierra held her gaze a moment longer, then smirked. Keep playing queen. Just don't forget. Even queens get voted out. She turned on her heel, and the other girls trailed her like designer perfume. When they were gone, Ella finally exhaled. Tiana stood frozen, eyes fixed on the floor, as if the moment hadn't quite left her body yet. "You okay?" Ella asked gently. Tiana nodded, then shook her head. "I wanted to say something," she said quietly. "I wanted to tell her to shut up, to move, to back off. But I couldn't." Ella paused, watching her. Tiana added, "I wanted to stand up. For myself like you did." Ella touched her shoulder. Not as comfort, but as connection. "Wanting backup doesn't make you weak," she said. "It makes you brave enough to know when to ask." Tiana blinked back something unspoken. They stood in the quiet together, the hum of the fluorescent lights above filling the space where fear had just lived. Down the hall, Sierra's laughter rang faintly, fading into the distance. But her words lingered, and the truth was, Sierra wasn't done. Because strength, real strength, it doesn't get handed to you. It gets tested. And what came next would test everything they'd just started to build, this time for the whole school to see. By the end of the week, the hallway whispers had softened, but they hadn't disappeared. The video of Ella confronting Brent still lingered like smoke in a room that refused to air out. Some laughed, some rolled their eyes, some just avoided her. Altogether, like standing near her might make them part of the story, but not everyone backed away. Some stepped forward. Coach Daniels was one of them. He found Ella in the bleachers after gym class, the rest of the students clearing out, sweat still drying on her forehead. "You've got something," he said simply. "People watch when you move. Have you ever thought about leading?" Ella shrugged. "Not really." He nodded slowly as if that was the answer he expected. "Well, you're doing it anyway, whether you want to or not." She looked up at him, unsure. He handed her a flyer. "Peer Mentorship Pilot Program." "Help us build something better," he said. "Help the ones who think no one sees them." She didn't say yes, not right away, but she didn't say no either. That afternoon, Tiana met her by the tree behind the science wing. They had started eating lunch there, just the two of them, away from the noise. She held out a small box. Ella raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" "A thank you," Tiana said. Inside was a handmade bracelet, braided tightly in red, black, and gold thread. It was simple, the kind of gift that didn't ask for anything in return. Ella turned it in her hand. "These were our colors." "At my old school," Tiana said. "We wore them at marches. When things got loud," Ella slipped it on without a word. "It fits perfectly." That night, she opened a blank page in her notebook. For once, not for homework, not for class, just for her. She wrote at the top, "Voice is freedom," and underneath, "It starts the moment someone stops shrinking." She didn't know where those words came from, but they felt true, like they had been, waiting for her to write them down. The next day, everything changed. Again. This time, it didn't start with whispers. It started with a video, but not that video, a new one, posted by someone anonymous but shot from a different angle. It showed Tiana's fall, clear as day, Colton's shove, Brittany's stumble, the laughter, the silence. And then, it showed Ella stepping forward, her words to the boys. Coach Daniels is backing her. The full picture, no music, no edits, just raw footage. The caption read, "Now you know." It hit the school like a jolt. Group chats lit up again, but this time with questions. "Did you see the new clip? Wait, so Brent lied? Yo, that other girl never even said a word. She just got shoved." By the third period, even the teachers were whispering. In English class, Ella saw two girls watching the clip under their desks, their faces blank with surprise. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The story was fighting back now on its own. At lunch, Coach Daniels pulled her aside. "You didn't post that, did you?" Ella shook her head. "I don't even know who did." He studied her. "Doesn't matter. Truth's out now." She nodded. But what neither of them said was this. Truth doesn't fix everything. It just changes the battlefield. And Eastbrook High? It wasn't done with her yet. Once people see what they choose to ignore, they have to choose again. And not everyone likes what the truth reveals, especially when it stains their pride. Bruised knuckles, open eyes. It happened fast, like these things always do. One moment, the hallway was full of everyday noise. Lockers slamming, laughter bouncing between the walls, sneakers squeaking against tile, and then, just like a light switch flipped, the air snapped into something else, a yell, a thud, a sharp, sickening crack of skin meeting bone. Then silence. And when the silence broke, it was with screams. Ty Carter, usually the quietest of Brent's crew, was standing over another student near the east stairwell. His knuckles are red, his breath ragged, his jaw locked like he was holding back the rest of the fury still inside him. The other boy, Darren Willis, was slumped against the lockers, nose bleeding, eyes wide with stunned disbelief. Phones were already out. The recording started just after the punch landed. Only the punch. Not what came before. Not the slur. Darren muttered. Not the way he said it, loud enough for Ty to hear, quiet enough to make it deniable. Not the look on Ty's face when it hit him. That combination of shame, rage, and helplessness. The look every kid of color at Eastbrook had worn at least once. But none of that was on video. Just the punch, and that was all the school needed to start talking again. By the 5th period, the footage had made it to the district. A shaky 7-second clip from a sophomore's phone. No audio worth saving. Just Ty swinging, Darren falling. No context, no justice, just consequences. Ella watched the clip once and turned it off. In the library that afternoon, she sat with Tiana at their usual table by the windows. Neither said anything for a while. The sun filtered in through the blinds, soft stripes of light across the table. The bracelet on Ella's wrist caught one of them, red, black, and gold thread glowing faintly. Finally, Tiana broke the silence. "They only care when we hit back." Ella nodded slowly. "Even when we're right. Even when we're provoked. Even when we're human." "It doesn't matter," Tiana said, voice low. "To them, we're threats. The moment we stop shrinking, we become dangerous." Ella sighed, fingers pressing hard into the edge of her notebook. "And if we stay quiet?" Tiana didn't answer. They both already knew. That evening, the call came from Principal Hartley. She left a message on Ella's phone. Simple, calm, official. "I'd like you to speak at Friday's assembly. About leadership. About what's been happening." Ella sat on her bed staring at the phone for a long time. She didn't hit play again. She didn't call back. She just let the silence fill the room. Later, she stood in front of her mirror holding a copy of her notebook. Flipping through the pages she'd written since it all began. Her handwriting was messy, rushed, angry, hopeful, human. At the bottom of one page, "If silence keeps you safe, why does it feel like drowning?" She closed the notebook, still unsure. To see. Next morning, she met with Principal Hartley in person. The woman's office smelled like lemons and old books. Her silver-rimmed glasses rested low on her nose. Her expression was tired but kind. "They'll listen to you," she said softly. "They already are." Ella shook her head. "I'm not a leader." Hartley didn't argue. She just said, "Maybe that's exactly why they'll listen." Ella didn't answer. She walked out of the office into the courtyard where Tiana was waiting. The bell hadn't rung yet. The sky was low and gray, like it couldn't decide whether to rain or not. "They want me to speak," Ella said. Tiana blinked. "Are you going to?" Ella shrugged. Tiana didn't push. But as they walked into school together, she said something Ella hadn't expected. "You've already been speaking, since the beginning. You just haven't heard yourself yet." That night, Ella didn't sleep much. She kept her notebook open on her bed, flipping through lines, reading them as if someone else had written them. Lines like, "Voice is freedom. Wanting backup doesn't make you weak. Truth fights back." And then, near the center, circled, bold, carved into the page, "Someone has to be first." She stared at that one until her eyes burned, and then she made a choice. Her voice didn't roar, but it would rise, because sometimes courage isn't the loudest person in the room. It's the one who speaks last and leaves everyone too quiet to ignore what they just heard. The auditorium lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the folding chairs and scuffed stage floor. Students shuffled into their seats in clusters, laughing, whispering, tugging at sleeves and adjusting earbuds. It was Friday. Assemblies at Eastbrook High were usually background noise, a break from class, a time to zone out while administrators droned through announcements and talked about kindness like it came in poster form. But this one felt different, not louder, just heavier. Ella. Parker sat backstage, knees locked, fingers curled around the edges of a worn spiral notebook. Pages bent, corners dog-eared. In the front row, Principal Hartley gave her a small nod. Coach Daniels leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching like a sentry. The mic had been tested. The cue was coming. She could still walk away. She could still pretend she didn't hear her name when it was called. But something deeper than fear had planted itself inside her. It wasn't fire. It wasn't thunder. It was weight, the kind you either carry forever or finally lift by opening your mouth. When her name was called, she stood. The walk from behind the curtain to center stage took 7 seconds. She counted each one. Her boots tapped softly against the floor. The auditorium fell quiet, not out of respect, but curiosity. The girl from the video, the quiet one, the one who made the jocks flinch. Ella reached the mic, cleared her throat, then paused. No notes, no slides, just a voice and the truth it had been holding in for far too long. "I'm not a public speaker," she began. "And I'm not here to be one." A few kids glanced at each other. "I'm not the loudest person in the room. I don't run things. I don't wear a crown. But I've been watching, and I've been silent. And I need you to know what that silence sounds like." She took a breath. "In this school, in this town, some people walk louder than others. Their names are written on buildings. Their parents sit on boards. Their mistakes get called jokes. Their cruelty gets brushed off as boys being boys." Murmurs now. But no one interrupted. I watched someone get shoved down in front of our building. Not tripped, not bumped, shoved. And I watched everyone pretend they didn't see it. Eyes shifted in the seats. Teachers are near the doors, students behind windows, even security, who I guess just thought it wasn't worth spilling their coffee over. A few heads dropped. She didn't. "Stop." And then I watched the girl who got shoved pick herself up like she always had to, alone, quiet, bleeding. Ella's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I saw her look at me, not to beg, not to cry, just to ask, silently, "Are you really going to do nothing?" Her grip tightened on the mic, and for a moment I almost did. I almost kept walking. I almost let fear win. Another breath. But I didn't. She looked out into the crowd. A sea of faces, some ashamed, some defensive, some finally just listening. And what I realized is this: what we allow becomes who we are. A few people shifted in their chairs. If we allow cruelty to become normal, then we become cruel. If we allow silence to cover injustice, then we become the silence. She paused again, letting that one echo. I'm not here to blame anyone. I'm here because I learned something the hard way. Her eyes softened. Standing up isn't about being fearless. It's about being tired of shrinking. She looked toward the back wall, where Tiana was standing now, just barely visible from the stage, arms crossed, eyes steady. I didn't come up here to give a speech. I came up here to take a stand. Ella stepped back from the mic, and for a second, just one, nothing happened. No clapping, no coughing, no movement at all, just air, still and thick, and then a single pair of hands began to clap, then another. Then the sound spread. Applause rose not like thunder, but like a wave. Not frantic, not forced, real. Ella didn't bow. She didn't smile. She just stepped off the stage and walked down the steps, her notebook clutched to her chest like armor. In the hallway, the sounds of the auditorium faded. Waiting by her locker, right where she always did, was Tiana. She held up a hand. I told you you had a voice, she said quietly. Ella looked at her for a second, then replied, Turns out I just needed to stop asking permission to use it. They walked away from the echoing applause together, the hallway oddly peaceful, the floor beneath their feet feeling steadier than it had in weeks. Because that voice, steady, quiet, unafraid, would soon ripple further than Ella could ever imagine. And sometimes, the smallest sound starts the biggest shift. The Monday after the assembly, something unexpected stirred in the halls of Eastbrook High. It wasn't loud, it wasn't immediate, but it was there. A different kind of hush. The kind that doesn't mean silence, but attention. Students glanced longer. Teachers watched closer. The hallways carried fewer smirks, fewer sideways comments. Like the weight of Ella's words hadn't just echoed, it had landed. The mentorship program Coach Daniels dreamed of finally launched that week. No big announcement. No fanfare, just a flyer taped near the library entrance. Peer support circle, come as you are. Sit if you need. Speak if you can. Ella didn't want to lead it, not at first. But when she walked into room 204, there were already 4 students waiting. Quiet, unsure, but present. And Tiana was there too, smiling like she knew something Ella didn't. That afternoon, after the group disbanded, Tiana pinned up a new sign in the library window. Poetry Thursdays, starting this week. Share what you can't say out loud. Ella helped her hang it. By the end of the week, 6 students had joined. It wasn't magic. It wasn't loud. It was steady. The next Monday during lunch, it happened. Ella and Tiana were sitting under their usual window, sandwiches half-eaten, notebooks open, talking quietly about nothing and everything, when a shadow fell over their table. A girl, freshman, tiny frame, baggy hoodie. A bruise faintly purple beneath her concealer. She didn't say her name. She just asked, "Can I sit with you?" Tiana looked at Ella. Ella nodded. Of course. The girl sat, said nothing more. Tiana split her sandwich in half and handed it over. Ella moved, her notebook aside to make space. And that moment, silent, small, barely seen, became the beginning of something bigger. Because in schools like Eastbrook, change doesn't always start with speeches or murals. Sometimes it starts with a quiet seat at a crowded table. But power, when seen, invites resistance. And courage, no matter how quiet, always comes at a cost. The difference now? They weren't standing alone anymore. Weeks turned to months. Eastbrook High didn't become perfect, but it became different. Sierra Nolan, once the queen of the cafeteria, still held her place at the front of the cheer line. But her words didn't sting like they used to. Not because She'd changed, but because fewer people laughed at them. Brent and his crew still walked the halls, but smaller now. Shoulders are not as wide, eyes not as bold. The school didn't forget what happened, and that made all the difference. Near the end of the semester, a new mural appeared above the lockers in the west hallway, painted by students, approved by teachers, unveiled without ceremony. It showed two girls. One is standing, with a clipboard in hand and chin high. The other seated, baton in lap, eyes locked forward. They didn't smile. They didn't pose. They faced forward. Underneath, in clean, bold block letters, respect doesn't ask permission. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. At home, Ella stood on the porch one warm evening, staring out at the sun melting behind the trees. Her brother, Drew, rolled up beside her in his chair, cocoa in hand. "Still scared?" he asked quietly. Ella didn't turn. She just smiled slightly. "Still here," Drew chuckled. "That's the real difference." They sat in silence, listening to the wind and the faint buzz of the neighborhood coming to life for the weekend. Somewhere, not far away, another bell was ringing, another hallway is filling, and in one of those hallways, crowded and humming with typical teenage noise, a new girl moved through the crowd. Her backpack was too heavy, her shoes are too worn, her voice is too small, and just a few feet away she saw something, a shove, a cruel laugh, a silence thick with fear. She stopped walking. Something burned in her chest, not rage, not confusion, recognition, because she'd heard a story, she'd seen a video, she'd read the quote above the lockers, and now she was the one standing there. The next move was hers. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't throw a punch. She stepped forward. Just one step, enough to shift the moment, enough to let someone know they weren't alone. And in that second, a new story began. Because courage once seen is contagious, and even when the world feels unkind, sometimes one person is enough to change what silence looks like. If this story moved you, made you think, or reminded you of someone who stood up when it counted, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite moment or what you would have done in Ella's shoes. The best comment will be pinned and might be featured in our next video, because courage doesn't need to be loud to be real. Sometimes it just needs to be seen.